Hey, y'all, and welcome to the podcast for the World Builders, where we dive into the spells and strategies for Black feminist world building and creative actualization. These weekly podcasts and newsletters are presented by Cedar School, where all this theory that we talk about in these episodes meets practice. I'm so honored so honored to be learning and practicing alongside you today and always. And if this is your first episode, thank you for tuning in. And if you are returning, thank you for coming back and being down to learn and study and imagine alongside us, right? If you are returning, you may also be familiar with our podcast ritual, where we ground ourselves inside our sensorium. I was listening to this podcast with, oh my goodness, I'm blanking on uh, their name, but it was with Grace Wells Bonners and this other curator. It's called Dialogues. The podcast is called Dialogues. And in that podcast, they were talking about, why this insistence on um, listening to images, right? Tina Camp's listening to images and sound being this kind of like having this resurgence in our collective consciousness around how we process the world, process information. And this curator was talking about perhaps it's because more and more with like this mediated existence that we share, it's harder to gauge what's real or not, with whether it's with AI or whether it's with misinformation, right? And that was just so compelling to me, and I had been thinking about it a lot, right? So what if inside of this ritual of grounding our sensorium, we're also opening up other technologies that we already have within our body for assessing and determining and maybe getting close to or experiencing truth, right? So before diving into every single podcast episode, we give ourselves permission to breathe into the present moment. We're just going to take a quick beat to become aware of our surroundings, to get curious about what's happening inside our sensorium. I'm going to take 3 deep breaths, deep, full belly breaths, and invite you to do the same if that feels possible in this moment. All right, y'all, let's begin. 3 deep breaths. Hmm. And maybe in that pocket of pause, maybe for you, there was a pocket of silence, right? Or maybe there was for you an opportunity to kind of make yourself aware of the noises or the sounds, the soundscape of this current moment. So let's take this moment to like note one thing in our sensorium, something that we could see, touch, taste, smell, hear in that pocket of pause, something that maybe we were able to feel beyond the senses we have language for. So what can I sense in this moment? I can see that your girl just got some new crypto rose, some Psychopha rose. If you're familiar with like the quote unquote braided baldy, I got that like a couple years ago and was like, oh no, this is like these are encryption keys in my head. And there's all of this research, Ron Eglash and Gloria Gilmore, two mathematicians that have talked about hair braiders and braids being a part of like math and the fractals embedded in it and all of that stuff, right? So I got super obsessed with this style. That's what I'm seeing right now. I am so excited to like bring it back into my beauty practice, into my beauty as a method, as Christina Sharp names it, right? So what can you sense, right? Or see, feel beyond maybe beyond the senses you have language for in this moment. What's going on in your sensorium? Now let's check in on our mood and intention right now in this very moment. Y'all, my mood is excited, right? Like the last free world building workshop of the year is happening on Thursday, and it's the last full week of open enrollment into the treehouse. Enrollment closes on Monday, the 21st, and it's always an absolute joy to watch the Seed to School web expand. We get to watch, support, and hold each other through these right, big, sometimes uncomfortable moments of like going outside of our comfort zone as we release art projects, release newsletters, and release income generating offers as well. It's always humbling to witness us just being us, right? And delighting in the beauty and love emanating out of the practice of using our gifts. And so that's my mood. I'm excited to be humbled. I am looking forward to being continuously humbled by our brilliance. What's your mood? How are you arriving? All right. Can we give ourselves 3 seconds to feel what we feel without judgment? Let's pause and check in here. Now we check in on our mood, but we also check in on our intention, right? We do nothing without intention, intention, intention. So speaking of humility, my intention is to humbly propose an alternative approach to pricing our offers today in this episode. Inside the treehouse, we go over how to develop 4 different types of offer, right? Different types of income generating offers. There's like the artifact offer, the one-on-one offer, the one-to-many offer, and the like done for you service-based offering. And we talk more about this in Thursday's world building workshop, but you may have seen the quote going around for a while, like quote, if it's not free, it's neither radical or revolutionary. It goes something like that. And the author, the source is unknown. But I want to start off by saying I disagree. Equitable, anti-capitalist, values aligned, resource exchange that is accountable to the communities we serve and the planet we inhabit can be some of the most radical and revolutionary work we do. In this current economic system, like quote unquote free to you just means the money is coming from somewhere else, right? And a lot of times that chain of funding is obfuscated, which can make accountability tricky, if not intentionally impossible. So in this episode, I want to invite us to consider the ways in which pricing our offers for sustainability, right, and accountability doesn't have to compromise the integrity of the work. In fact, I want to propose it can actually empower, make possible the worlds that we dream of building. So what's your intention behind listening to this episode? I'm going to pause here and let you reflect on that, right? Or what's your intention inside of doing whatever it is you're doing right now if you're multitasking? All right, let's bring in some mindfulness into what we're doing here, right? Because we're getting into a big one. Episode 62. Don't focus on making the offer accessible to everyone else. It becomes inaccessible to you. And maybe you're nodding your head in agreement, or maybe you just tightened. Maybe you just winced. Maybe you rolled your eyes. Maybe you silently scoffed. Y'all, can we talk through this tenderly? Before drafting an email about how crass or insensitive the title of this episode is, I want to start by saying there are a multitude of ways you can keep your offer accessible to you, right? We know there are an infinite amount of ways to get your needs met, to get our collective needs met, right? Maybe you go on tour with your offer in exchange for housing, right? Maybe you're a homeschooling art teacher, right? A private chef, an interior designer, someone who's teaching someone a different language. Maybe you're a doula on a will work for travel vibe, right? Maybe you exchange a seat in your offer for childcare. Maybe you have a service-based offering like photography and you take the most tender photos of your neighbor's family in their backyard in exchange for like some of the healing or medicinal herbs and tinctures made using the plants or produce growing in their garden, in the same garden you just did a photo shoot for them inside of, right? There are a multitude of resources, therefore, a multitude of ways to resource our needs. But today, I'm going to focus on our shared resource, money. This is because, right, the odds are your electric company, the healthcare company, the hospital, the banks, the grocery store, the landlord, right, they're not interested in trading a seat in your offer. Right? This might be the world we're building toward, but we're not there yet. So how do we regulate our nervous system around making sure our offer is priced at a point that ensures the work's sustainability? I first want to invite us to breathe through the following statements. The work wants me well. My ancestors want me well inside answering their call. The community I dream of serving wants me well. And the last one, no one wants to be inside an offer I'm struggling to offer. One more time, y'all. No one wants to be inside an offer I'm struggling to offer. I had to learn all this the hard way. When I put myself out of business in 2016 due to perpetual extension beyond my max capacity. Now, right, we all go beyond our capacity every now and then. That's one of the ways we come to know what our limit is. We take on a certain amount of clients, right? We spend a certain amount of time behind the computer. We try on a new routine and go, nah, nope, that ain't feel good. Let's not do that again, right? That wasn't the problem. My problem was I was insisting on working in ways that push me past my max because I was insisting on keeping my prices low to remain quote unquote affordable to small business owners. But let's back it up, right? What was I offering? So in 2014, I want to tell you just a quick story. In 2014, I started a magazine called District. It was District with a K. Super creative name. Like listen, the magazine, the zine showcased the art, style, and politics of the DC metro area. At the time, I was living right outside DC in Prince George's County, PG County, and was going into the city almost every day. I was surrounded by creative peers and was often going to artist-funded, organized events, like artists, like independent artist-funded and organized events and exhibitions, right? These were like independently funded like events and exhibitions that were organized by artists. And these events and exhibitions unfolded everywhere from galleries to warehouses. And eventually, I was like, why don't we have an artist-funded and organized magazine showcasing all this dynamic, politically critical work inside what we know as Chocolate City and the rest of the world knows as the quote unquote nation's capital? We were making this work, y'all, in the backyards that we shared with the engine of empire. Certainly, we should be documenting this work. Certainly, we should be archiving this. Certainly, we should be platforming and empowering this work that has the potential to put pressure on the state right where the state is being crafted. The warehouse art shows and open air artist salons happening in public parks and skate parks weren't being covered by the Washington Post or the city paper or whatever we had at the time, at least not the gatherings that I was being invited to and the gatherings that I was like attending, right? So District, and I'll link an example to one of our issues in the show notes, but District was born with a whole lot of help from a whole lot of friends who would contribute a poem or photographs or their time in an interview. I would transcribe the interviews, design the book layout, work with local printers, and organize release parties for each issue. And after a while, local small businesses started to notice and started to contract me for creative direction support, pointers for how to engage DC's emerging artists, strategies on how to activate empty event spaces or empty restaurant spaces during the day, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And I noticed, or before I noticed it actually, an accidental community engagement consulting practice emerged from the magazine. It became the business that made independently publishing the magazine possible. Right? Because I was making all of these connections inside of DC's creative community, those same folks, that word started to spread, and folks wanted me to kind of like activate the communities that their small business was serving. Right? And in turn, that freelance, that consulting work, that strategy work, that creative direction work became the business that made the magazine possible. But as you can imagine, these like two businesses became a lot of work. Long story short, I worked with DC-based restaurants, independent cultural workers, design agencies, and even the Hirshhorn Museum at one point, which is in fact not a small business. And I was deeply undercharging everyone, especially the museums and the institutions. I was in and out of meetings all day and barely charging enough to cover the ridiculous parking tickets I was getting from just taking up space, just breathing DC's air. Like if you know, you know. DC's parking tickets, they are ridiculous. And I was undercharging amidst all of this workload and all of these expenses, right? And why? Why was I undercharging my clients? Perhaps it was because I was trying to apply the same DIY punk approach, right, that I applied to the zine with my clients. I told myself I was, quote unquote, doing it for the culture. Eventually, y'all, I had to close the magazine. Eventually, I had to stop taking on clients. I completely burned out, and I went from showing up for my friends at some art event every weekend to completely isolating, trying to recover. It happens. And I don't blame myself. I hadn't yet cultivated healthy work habits. But district released issues biannually. And sometimes I do wonder, where would we be? Where would I be? Where would the city be? Where would the archive be if we had published 18 issues from then until this point? Between 2015 and 2024 is 9 years. That's 9 years of community building and creative practice that could have been documented, empowered, and resourced. Again, I regret nothing. After the much needed creative sabbatical, I went on to launch a clothing line, learned how to code, became a teacher, and remember, I was a writer. And without that hard lesson, maybe Cedar School might not exist. Now back to the title of this episode. I truly believe being of service in ways that only you can is in service to your highest self and our collective highest selves, right? It allows us to meet each other in deep, authentic, generous, and most of the time, surprising ways. So don't focus on making the offer accessible to everyone else, that it becomes inaccessible to you. Right? Please don't take your gifts out the game, off the board. Please don't take your gifts away from us. If you can, price your offering at $1, like a buck, right? And it remains accessible to you to deliver it at that price point, then that is beautiful. Please do it, right? Sonia Renee Taylor has a $1 tier in her Patreon community, and that is beautiful. But if we lose access to the transformative tools, values, strategies, creativity inside your offer, because it's not priced in a way that creates the capacity necessary for you to deliver it, then it is in service to no one. Not to you, not to me. No one benefits, no one wins in this scenario, except maybe our shame, right? The shame spirals or the negative self-talk that wants to creep in whenever we know it's time to pivot or honor ourselves and each other in sometimes uncomfortable ways. Right? But we know that discomfort is often temporary. We can survive that kind of emotional discomfort. And listen, it's never too late, right? We can always make different decisions with new information, always. We can always raise our rates so that they're in deeper alignment with our needs. We can always redesign our offer ecosystem so that it feels sustainable with maybe the other responsibilities and obligations that we have in our life, right? We can also choose to run toward the voices of love in our hearts and minds and bless and release the voices rooted in fear, telling us, oh, well, my ideal client can't afford X. Right? That shuts off all creative possibility and opportunity, right? Kind of the statement and the story ends there. My ideal client can't afford X. No one's going to buy anything from me at X price. My community will judge me for how high or low my prices are, right? Whatever echoes of fear arise, we can always choose to meet them with love, always. We remember the work wants me well. My ancestors want me well inside their call. The community I dream of serving wants me well. No one wants to be inside an offer I'm struggling to offer. We remember the folks we dream of serving want us or want to meet us inside work rooted in love, not fear. I'm going to say that again. We remember the folks we dream of serving want to meet us inside work rooted in love, not fear. We remember it is okay. We have permission to charge what will keep us here, right? What will keep us inside the work we came here to do. And trust me, I know it's hard. Like regulating around this might actually be the hardest part of developing an offer, right? I know it's hard. Recovering people pleaser, like Libra moon here, I know it's hard. And this is a lesson I've had to learn many, many times. But what if, as cultural workers, incorrectly pricing our work in the name of quote unquote doing it for the culture is actually compromising the work's viability and sustainability for whatever culture it is for? Right? What happens on the other side of us remembering the culture wants us well too? Wants us well resourced in every way, wants the work well resourced in every way. And if this isn't true yet, how do we change the quote unquote culture, right? Through our refusal to be quote unquote starving artists, right? How do we change a culture that is perpetually okay with serving artists crumbs? Right? Giving us the bare minimum, saying our life or our work is changing their lives or transforming their lives, but still we can't, right, seem to resource our own lives. Like, how do we change that culture? How do we switch up that equation? And my coach, Davis, always says this, and I'm paraphrasing here, but she says our goals inside our practice, right, are usually only as viable as our nervous system's capacity to regulate, right, around the pivots, expansions, necessary money moves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right, our goals inside our practice are like only as good as our nervous system's capacity to kind of like regulate around some of the strategies and actions that we actually need to do, right, to pull those goals closer into our present reality, to make them possible. So, and when we talk about kind of like resources, right, when we say resourced, if we consider our nervous system's capacity, then it's clear that we're not just talking about money. We're also talking about, right, like the felt sense of safety, trust, and breath we're able to access in our bodies and in our practices. Which is why there's a library of Black, or there's a library of like breathwork meditations inspired by Black feminist quotes inside the treehouse. And the library is growing every month, right? Fritz Perls reminds us fear is excitement without breath. Y'all, breath work and offer development and creative practice, they go hand and hand. Breath work and world building go hand and hand. Our inhale allows us to like experience this felt sense of expansion in our in like our exhale. Allows us to kind of like soften and get comfortable inside of it. How might we honor the needs of our nervous system, aka our bodies, right? And take care of our material needs, aka our material reality. This is like an existential and ontological question I find as Black feminists we're circling again and again and again and again. I'll put the full citation in the show notes, but in an interview with Rizvana Bradley, Sadia Hartman asks, in the context of such enormous structural violence, how was it possible to imagine that a beautiful life is possible? Even more unthinkable was the idea that one might create it not in the future, but now. Right? This is the question that we're collectively circling around right now in the context of enormous, enormous structural violence. How do we honor our gifts? How do we honor our breath? How do we create a beautiful life, not in the future, but now? This is where we move into the invitation portion of the podcast, because this is exactly what we're talking about in our last free world building workshop of the year. The workshop is titled Resource a World Rooted in the Truth of Your Needs. It's on Thursday, October 17th, this Thursday, October 17th at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So join us virtually for lunch, dinner, breakfast, depending on your time zone. And link to register for free is in the show notes. You'll also get a link to the replay of part 1 of the workshop series, where we located our zone of desire using the Element X quadrant worksheet. So you'll get that replay and a link to the worksheet in your confirmation email, making your registration confirmation email for part 2. But y'all, I just want to kind of close on this note. It be us. Black women, Black trans folk, Black queer folk, Black gender expansive folk, right? Black disabled folk, Black poor folks. It be us that will do it for everyone else but ourselves. And listen, I know I am you. You are me. We are we. I get that. But it's our name on the bills that keep the lights on and the toilet flushing. And if it's like any time, right? The world needs our offers. It's especially now. We know a thing or two about surviving the end of the world. But baby, that is another podcast episode for another time. Point is, I'm guilty of undercharging too. And I'm here to tell you, price accordingly and we'll be here. We'll be patiently waiting we'll be patiently waiting until, right, our financial situation changes, or we'll do some resourceful, creative thing to change it, right? We are artists, we are creative, we are resourceful. We have made a world out of thin air, a pen and paper before. We've done it, right? We'll wait until you have the capacity to offer a scholarship, sliding scale options, skill shares, etc. Trust me, we'll wait. I'll speak from the I here, right? In case I am part of the community you dream of serving. Please don't focus on making the offer accessible to me, that it becomes inaccessible to you. Please don't mind my pockets, mind yours. Be a sturdy steward of your practice, resources, livelihood, and ideas. Be a responsible steward. We can feel that. And again, no one wants to be inside an offer. You're struggling to offer. I'm going to continue to say that. And to be clear, y'all, like, again, we talk about this in the retreat. The price is not even what sells the offer, right? What sells your offer is how you communicate its transformation. When we're talking about the value, the quote unquote value of an offer, all we're talking about is the change, the transformation, the journey. All we want to know is, how is this going to help me get from point A to point B, right? How is this going to solve my problem? How is this going to allow me to further investigate a question I've been curious about, or get me closer to a goal that I've decided for myself, my communities, my family, right? We don't make purchasing decisions based on pain points or problems alone. Common business advice is to sell the painkiller. I'm here to tell you we make purchasing decisions based on our desires too. And I'm here to tell you what we deeply desire is to be inside a resource exchange that feels most supportive for you, not just us. I'm here to tell you we wouldn't want to experience your gifts any other way. Truly. Thank you for tuning into another episode of the podcast for the World Builders, where we dive into the spells and strategies of Black feminist world building while exploring, right, how offering the skills and wisdom from inside our journey of transformation might seed, resource, and deepen creative practices rooted in collective liberation. I firmly believe we all came into this world creative. We all came into this world with something to offer. And deep down, we all want to orient around politics of love instead of politics of fear. These are the many beliefs we try to honor inside Cedar School. And as always, this podcast will forever be free. But, the best way to support this podcast is by sharing it with a friend or taking a screenshot or a screen recording of the episode and sharing it on social media so other world builders can find us. Y'all, you will never see a Cedar School ad while scrolling the metaverse. So I am putting my faith in you and the work instead. Every week, Cedar School deeply relies on word of mouth to keep the lights on. So tell a friend to tell a friend if you want to keep these episodes coming. I heard rating and leaving a review helps too. Second best way to support is by becoming a paid subscriber to the Cedar School Substack at $5 a month, but only if you have the financial capacity to do so. Again, these podcast episodes will forever be free. Until next week, y'all. So be it. See to it. Breathe through it.